Okay, we want to grab our seats. It's officially 8:30 p.m. Welcome, everyone. My name's Ron. I'm an alcoholic. A couple quick announcements. The crowd's restless. Of course, I hope you heard that the CRV left his interior lights on. Oh, well, we'll give you a jump afterwards. A couple quick announcements. We have a Facebook page. A lot of you are familiar with that. The Conscious Contact Speaker Group at Doylestown keeps you connected, keeps us connected. If you have any events going on in AA, we'd like to know about any workshops, any events at all, 12-step workshops, conventions, roundups, recordings, anything like that there. We also offer, the meeting here is put on YouTube. So the Conscious Contact Speaker Group at Doylestown YouTube page, just subscribe to that. You can listen. It also has in this room, on Monday night, we have a literature and step meeting, Stay Alive Literature and Step meeting group. It's great. We bring in different speakers each week. It's a lot of fun. It's at 6 p.m. 6 or 6:30? I don't know. 6 p.m. And then our sister group is a big book study. Meets at Thursdays, right up the street at Salem UCC Church. We go line by line. We break the book down. We share our experience with it, and hopefully we can get people to get into this program of recovery and transform ourselves from the person we were when we walked through the door to somebody that's living a full life, enjoying it sober. Anyway, we have a great speaker, I hope, tonight. He's up to it? You up to it? He says, yeah. And we got a great chairperson. You up there? Let's welcome up Nick up here, and let's get this party going.
All right, welcome to the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Alcoholics Anonymous. My name is Nick, and I am an alcoholic. This is a one-hour speaker meeting that meets every Saturday evening at St. Paul's Lutheran Church, 301 North Main Street, at 8:30 p.m. in Doylestown, Pennsylvania. Food and fellowship starts at 8 p.m. The business meeting for this group meets every Saturday at 7 p.m. to 7:30 right here. The purpose of this group is to provide a consistent message of hope and recovery through God reliance and service to others through the practice and teaching of the 12 steps. We record all speakers so that others may benefit from their message of recovery. If you wish not to be recorded, simply ask. This is an open meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. The group would like to welcome everyone, especially newcomers. Is there anyone new or from out of town that would like to introduce themselves with their first name?
Deborah.
Hi, Deborah. Welcome. Glad you're here. Yes, sir, in the back. Hey, Tim. Welcome.
Brian.
Hey, Brian. Welcome.
David.
Welcome.
Kelly.
Hi, Kelly. Welcome. Yes, sir.
Anthony, alcoholic.
Hey, Anthony. Welcome.
Doug, alcoholic.
Hey, Doug. Welcome.
Zach, alcoholic.
Joseph. Very good. I'm glad you're all here. Thank you so much. The Conscious Contact Speaker Group encourages sponsorship. Would anyone with working knowledge of the 12 steps and is willing to sponsor, please raise your hand. Are there any announcements for the good of AA? We have meeting lists and big books on easy terms. Please see me or any home group member after the meeting. If you cannot afford a big book, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group will give you one at no charge. Anyone willing to make donations for the purchase of Big Book and CDs to help those who can't afford them can put donations in the jar on the table marked Big Book and CD donations. If you'd like a CD of any speaker past or present, please see me or any home group member before or after the meeting, and they are available free of charge. And now with that, I have Alan to come up and read the Aaa Preamble.
Right now.
Alan, alcoholic. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. And then I ask Ben to come up and read the AA 12 Steps of Recovery. All right.
I'm Ben, I'm an alcoholic. So, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people whenever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying for only knowledge of His will and the power to carry that out. And 12, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all of our affairs.
The seventh tradition. Every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. At this time, I'd like to pass the baskets. We have no dues or fees, but we do have expenses. This group provides many services, and donations cover rent, big books, CDs, events, and workshops. And just a quick announcement. We did some research, and in 1970, the equivalent of $1 today is actually $7.25. So, not trying to ruffle any feathers, but there is absolutely no smoking on church property. Please take a moment to silence all cell phones and limit movement during the meeting to avoid distractions. Now to introduce our speaker, a good friend of the Conscious Contact Speaker Group, Teddy C. from the Just for Today group from Wilmington, Delaware.
Hi, I'm Teddy. I'm an alcoholic. Grateful to be here. Grateful to be alive and sober. There was a lot on my mind as I got up here and just kind of went blank. I always think it's amazing that I get a round of applause for burning not just my life, but everybody else's life around me to the ground. It's really good to see Greg here and Chris here, good friends of mine. I just felt real, and Dana, now I feel real comfortable. All right, and I want to thank Ron for having me out here. I don't want to say it's like a dream to be here. I don't think that's the right word, but this is a meeting that I know well. I've never been here, but I know of it, and I really never thought I'd be here. Hopefully, we'll see what happens. Before I came here tonight, this is just on my heart because it struck me, and maybe it's not really AA related. Hopefully I can make it AA related, but I was watching the Final Four preview show, and they were doing a tribute to Coach K. And, you know, love me or hate me, probably going to shut some of you guys off. I'm a huge Duke fan. So, but they were doing a tribute, and there was a part near the end where his wife came on, and she talked about how he had 3 daughters. But due to him being him, he had a lifetime of sons. And I'm the kind of guy that will miss that stuff. I will absolutely miss what God has in front of me. And I'll be concentrated on I need to have a son, or I need to have 2 sons, or these 3 daughters ain't enough. And I'll miss the hundreds of men that I get to work with today that I've gotten to touch their lives a little bit thanks to you people. And I'm grateful for that awareness today, and I'll lose sight of that sometimes. I think it's important to start with just a couple things. I actually have 2 home groups in Alcoholics Anonymous. Because I do try to do my best to follow traditions, I only vote in one if it pertains to Alcoholics Anonymous as a whole. If it pertains to the group, I vote in both. The first one is the Fairfax Speaker Group of Wilmington, Delaware. We meet Sunday nights at 7 p.m. It's an hour speaker meeting. I'm a sharer, I'm a talker. You guys will probably get the gist of that tonight by the end. And for an hour each week, I get to sit and listen. And I don't have to think about what I'm going to say. I don't have to think about sounding cool. I just get to sit and listen to a message of recovery. And why it's important to me is our big book's clear that each person tells his own story in his own way of how they've developed their relationship with God. And I get to hear a different perspective on that each week. I assume that everybody's taking the 12 steps, and I hope everybody's taking the 12 steps through the big book, but I get to hear how they continue to develop that relationship with God in their own way. And I'm grateful for that. I have a commitment at that home group. But more importantly, my second home group is really, it's my heart, it's my home. It's been my home group since I've been in Wilmington. It's a Just for Today group in Wilmington, Delaware. We meet Mondays through Fridays at 12:15. I chair the Big Book meeting on Tuesdays, and you'll find me there every Tuesday. And why I tell you that that's my heart is early on in this journey, I was in California, and I was at an hour speaker meeting just like this. And there was this big guy who was an ex-Army Ranger, and his story just knocked me dead. And it's, I don't know what you guys do here, but at the end of that meeting, and for better or for worse, they sat the guy at the front door. And every week we went, they would sit the speaker by the front door, so everybody had to walk out and shake this guy's hand. And I got to him, and he was a big dude, and I didn't want to touch him. Right, he was sweating, like his armpit sweat was visible. And I went to shake his hand, and I said thank you with sincerity, and I think it made him want to give me a hug. So he drew me in. And I asked him, I said, you know, you were, during your share, you talked about why your home group was a homeless mission. You had a home group that was at a homeless mission. I said, why would that? You sound like a guy who would do an hour speaker meeting or a Big Book meeting. And he said, well, if you get comfortable with this Big Book, that's where it tells me that I have to be. And that changed my life. It really did. I was about 4 months sober. I had an experience, which hopefully we get to, where I went through the steps in a treatment center in California. Something that I was told or I thought or I believe that you don't do. And I had another sponsor and I started to go through the steps again. And that struck me. And a couple months later I moved to Wilmington, Delaware, and I walked into this meeting, and within 2 days I recognized that that's exactly where my Big Book tells me to be, on the firing lines. You walk in there any day and there's halfway house guys and girls, recovery house guys and girls, Oxford house guys and girls. There's a place called the Friendship House where they don't know it, but these guys and women are essentially homeless. They really don't know it, which I can relate to. They have to be out by 6 in the morning. They can't come back till 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. They get fed in the bottom of a church. They live in the bottom of a church, and they walk in there too. And I walked in there numerous days, and I've seen people with a lot of time who are talking a lot of really great stuff, and then they talk to each other at the end of the meeting, and these people leave without sponsors, and I knew that that's where I needed to be. And I've been useful and effective there. And simply because I'm here with you guys. And that's not selfish. My family depends upon me today. I have a job that depends upon me today. And whether or not those guys do what I was unwilling to do for a really long time is it's really none of my business, right? I'm supposed to be in front of them. I'm supposed to extend a hand. I'm supposed to be offering them this way of life. And if they want, I spend as much time as necessary. I invite them into my home. And what happens between them and God is between them and God. And because of that, I'm here today. And that's why that place is in my heart. So as much as I love these meetings and I come to these meetings, you know, and I don't say this to ruffle feathers, I say this, I encourage you to do not lose sight, because when I leave a treatment center, this is not the meeting they tell me to come to unless Ron shows up with a commitment, or unless Nick shows up with a commitment, or Chris shows up at a rehab at a commitment. Those places tell me to go to the places that is Just for Today group. And I go there and I hear this sit down and don't say anything and keep coming to meetings, and your life will get better. And that may work. The problem with the hard drinker is you placed me inside of a bar next to someone who's a hard drinker, and my drinking looks precisely the same, at times maybe not even as bad. And then I come into AA and I sit next to those people, and they find friends and they find fellowship and they find some spiritual principles that are really easy for them to apply. You know, I was talking to some guys last night on the way home from a commitment, and I asked them, how many times since you've been in AA, you teach me some stuff here, and it's really cool, right? And so I have this knowledge. And I know the right thing to do, like I know it. Yet there's just something inside of me that does not allow me to do it. And I don't even know what it is. There was a girl at work, and we got into an argument a couple years ago, and I didn't want to talk to her. I literally, that's how I respond to. That's how my alcoholism shows up. I'm cold, I'm callous, I'll act like you don't exist. And she came into work a couple days later, and this is a couple days later, right? I'm talking 3 days later, I'm separated from this thing that happened on Saturday, and I'm still thinking about it. And I'm pretty sure she does not know, it doesn't even care that it happened, but I'm still thinking about it. And she approaches me at the soda machine, and she starts telling me about how her dad's sick, and her dad's going through it, and she's got to take care of him. And my mind's saying, just say you're sorry to hear that. But my heart is saying, I don't care. And that's how I know that the spiritual illness far outweighs the mental and the physical illness that I suffer from when I come in here. And that's what has to be treated, or I'm drinking again. And I'm grateful for people that showed me this way, that showed me the truth. And I'm grateful that I was open to the truth. I do sponsor men today, and it's probably one of the bright spots in my life. But I think for the first few years I came in here, if I had an opportunity to do this, I would have been up here telling you that that's it, that's what you have to do, and it is. And do not lose sight of that. But I think the reason that I'm here today, and it's come to me over the last year, is that for better or for worse, not easily, but I have remained sponsored in Alcoholics Anonymous. I have seen friends of mine who literally helped me with the spiritual angle on this thing and how to approach guys with the spiritual angle. I'm the guy that a year sober, I was in meetings sharing from resentment. And Greg knows this. He was sitting next to me and I'm resentful, you're doing it wrong and you're killing them. And my friend said, well, if we're coming in here to take care of resentments, you think you're helpful sounding that resentful? And that guy he's still sober, but he's been going through it over the last couple of years, and he's still a good friend of mine, and we talk all the time, but he's unsponsored. And it really hit me that, man, I'm grateful that even on days when I don't want to, I call this man, and I talk to him. And when he tells me to write inventory, maybe not in the fashion or time that he tells me to write it, but I write it. And I come to the truth about some stuff. There's a line in our book that it struck me a couple months ago at a big book meeting, but it says, when this sort of thinking is fully established in a person with alcoholic tendencies like myself, I have usually placed myself beyond human aid. And unless I die, I'll get locked up or I'll go permanently insane. And I get that. I get that when I come in here. I get that, right? I can't stop drinking. I've tried to stop drinking. I go back to drinking. And unless I find some solution to that, I'm going to die. Or probably for a guy like me, I go on to the bitter end and I'm getting locked up and I'm going permanently insane. And then maybe I'll die later. But what's that look like sober? And I'll tell you that I don't experience that stuff anymore, but the case is, in November I was at work, and it's always at work, or in a relationship. They're the two places. And this kid, man, I'm absolutely convinced, even at 4.5 years sober, if this kid would just do what I want him to do, if I could just show him how to do our job right, and if he would just do it precisely how I do it, everybody, including myself, would be happy. And it works for a little bit. And I'll be nice, and I'll be kind, and I'll be selfless. And then he stops doing certain things, and then I just rely on old spiritual principles of mine, which are mean and egotistical and just callousness. And either way, it just doesn't work, and he's not doing what I want him to do and what it resulted in, and I'm going to respect the group. But I'm sure most men in here would know, he called me a word that it really challenges my manhood. And he did it in a way where he kind of walked away and I heard him. And thank God for some of the principles, because I stood up when he did it, and then I sat back down. And I've heard a lot of people in meetings talk about almost like they do this pause, right? And they tell me, they tell us all how principled they are and how spiritual they are, and they pause. And I think that's cool. It's a great practice. But what happened to me in that moment, because I didn't know what happened, is I got paused. I didn't sit down. I sat down and I didn't even realize I sat down. And I started to think, why does this bother me so much? Now that didn't stop. For 3 weeks, and I'm not even exaggerating. For 3 weeks, if you want to know what permanently insane to me sober looks like, is every night I'm writing a review about this kid, right? Every night he's in my review. And I'm walking around my apartment, and I'm talking to myself, and in the morning I'm getting in the shower, and I'm talking to him, and if he says this to me, I'm going to say this to him. And if he does it again, this is what's going to happen. And not only that, I'm preparing for how I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to walk out after I do this to him, and I'll just get another job somewhere else. And maybe it's time maybe this is what God has for me, to show me that I shouldn't be serving tables anymore. Mind you, that this job provides for my kid, it provides for me, it enables me to live in an apartment that I was never able to live on my own for years. I've never lived on my own until the last year. And then finally one night from practicing these principles and writing this review, it came to me oh man, you've been trying to manage and control this kid for the last 2 months that he's been working there. Maybe that's why he's so angry. Maybe you owe him an apology. And the next day my sponsor called me and he said, I'm really glad you came to that. He's I was going to tell you that you probably should owe that kid an apology. And this is my reaction to anyone that tries to direct me in the right way. I said, well, if you were such a good sponsor, why weren't you saying that 3 weeks ago when it was in the first review? And this is the guy who pays the price to be in my life, and that's how I speak to him. And he said, you know what, let me call you back. So he called me back, and he paused. And he said, you know, you probably should go make an amends to him. And he said, you even said it in your review. And I said, well, I'm not. I know. I said I should make an apology. I didn't say I was going to make the apology. That's not happening. I shouldn't do it until I'm absolutely sincere. Thank God I haven't had that attitude towards certain amends in my last 4.5 years, or I probably wouldn't be here. You know, wait until I was sincere. I'm never sincere. I never want to do it. It never sounds like a good idea to me. You know, I love it when people, I tell guys all the time, if you want, I'm going to tell you the truth. If you're with me, if you're like me and you see those 12 steps, none of that stuff looks attractive to me when I come in here. Like when you read Fred's story, or even Bill says it in different ways, they say these are revolutionary but drastic proposals. These are lifelong ideas that I've had that have to be thrown to the side and then replaced by a new set. Like I don't have any of this when I walk in here. Admit I'm wrong. You know, these guys laughed last night. I'm dating myself a little bit, but I grew up with grandparents. I'm like the Fonz from Happy Days. I'm I can't get it out. Like it does not come naturally to me to say I'm wrong. I don't do it. And you tell me that that's like one of the key things I have to do to stay here. Like I'm not. There's got to be another way. But what happens is I pray that night, and some sincerity came to me, and I realized if I want to experience some freedom, maybe I got to approach this 22-year-old kid when I'm 40 and apologize. And if you had been sitting next to me, like anybody who knows me, if you had been standing next to me, every ounce of my being did not want to tell this kid I was wrong. And when I did, he responded, man, that was really big of you. And my first response, I know it's big of me, dude. You would never do this. I know this is big of me. Just let me. Thank God I didn't say that stuff to him either. But when I got home, he thanked me. But the more important thing is when I walked home, the last 3 weeks just fell away from me. And I was no longer consumed or dominated by the world and its people. And I was at peace for a minute. And it amazes me to this day how much of peace will I sacrifice to save a little bit of my pride. And thank God for Alcoholics Anonymous, because I would have no idea. You know, I was on a meeting last week, and they got to, a couple weeks ago, and they got to ask me questions on Zoom afterwards. And the guy, after I shared a half hour of the story, he says, how do you have a spiritual awakening? So first of all, I was immediately offended. I just told you how I had a spiritual awakening. Were you not listening to me? And I tried to give him some profound answer to like, how do you have a spiritual awakening? And then after like 15 minutes of sounding like an idiot, I said to him, you know what? I said, I think the spiritual awakening is often misinterpreted. It's painful at times, but it's an awareness. You know, for a long time, I had family members always telling me I was self-centered, selfish, you know, you're mean, all these things about myself, and I was indignant about it. I was like, what are you talking about? Like, self-centered, I'd give you the shirt. I mean, I don't have a lot of shirts, but I'd give you the shirt off my back if I could. Like, I didn't even know that I was doing these things, and today, thanks to you people, there's just a tiny bit of awareness that keeps me in a position to just stay here. And not to stay here, but to stay here. Like, in this moment, in my job, with a promotion a couple weeks ago, as a father. And that's the miracle of what happens in here. I don't know, like loving God separated me from alcohol and other forms of it on May 12th of 2017, and I don't, say that to be different. I don't say it's a sobriety date just to sound different from you guys. I say it because I didn't surrender this time. Like I didn't come in here waving the white flag. There's something happened to me where I was surrendered. Like I just was all out of anything. There was nothing left. There was no fight. There was nothing. And I don't even really know at times how it happened. I just knew that a curious mental phenomenon that generally meets a little bit of sound reasoning, for the first time the insane idea did not win out. And sound reasoning didn't look like what it normally looked like. It looked like, Teddy, you don't die. You think you're going to die, but you don't. So maybe you should just do something different. And I'm grateful for that. I suffered from this thing in an early age. I didn't know it. I wouldn't have been able to put words to it. So all I can do, to the best of my ability, is give you some examples. As a kid, my grandparents, they literally gave up everything to raise me. And when we would be places, if I didn't get what I wanted, I would scream at these people in front of anybody and everybody. With every fiber of my being, with like vitriol, like, I hate you. And I meant it in those moments. Maybe not 5 minutes later, maybe not an hour later when I was at home, but in that moment, I hated them. I grew up down in Wildwood, New Jersey, if some of you are familiar, and there's a huge boardwalk down there, and I just hung out with kids that seem to have this thing, and I don't know what this thing is, but they seem to be able to talk to people and talk to girls, and I didn't have it, I just didn't. I was really inept at it, and I would say, like, hi, and I would think that was going to get the girl, like, hi, and it was like a hi, right? I couldn't even get that out. But once in a while, right, it's kind of like our book describes, like once in a while I'd have this spiritual experience where once every 3 weeks or a month I'd be able to go up there and something would happen where I would feel like them and I would seem to look like them and I would talk and I would get a girl's number and the next day I couldn't call her. And when I got rejected, I would sit in my room and I would listen to sad Boys to Men music for days on end. And I always get a laugh out of that, and it's sad, but it's true, and I'm not even making that up. And I wonder why I was having trouble with personal relationships. Because my friends would be like, dude, you're weird. Like, it's weird. And I'd be like, no, you don't understand. You just don't understand. And the sad truth is they didn't understand. They didn't. When I grew up Catholic, and I got a confirmation name, and I picked Joseph, and the reason I picked Joseph is obviously my name's Teddy. It's Theodore Tash Chambers III, right? It is the most awkward. It sounds regal and rich. I had none of that stuff. I was not rich, not regal, not royal, and I grew up with Teddy Grahams, Teddy Ruxpin. I grew up with, if you watch Full House, there was a little light-skinned kid on the show with the curly hair. That was precisely my twin. His name was Teddy. There was Teddy Pendergrass, right? Teddy Roosevelt gets worn out. But it was the worst name ever for a kid that looked like me, that felt like me. And I was convinced. For 2 years, I tried to convince my grandparents, if you just let me legally change my name to Joseph, and I'll just be Joe, everything will be okay. And today I'm grateful that they didn't let me change my name. But I, for 2 years, was convinced. I even said, like, if you just let me get a nose job, I'll be okay. Just let me get my lips, like, I don't know what they would even do, but like plastic surgery. Just do something so I feel like these kids seem to look. And what I didn't know is that they had given me a drink at 7, at 12, at 13. I wouldn't have thought any of that. And how I know that is because I was embarrassed by my middle name, Tash, because I thought it was weird. It's not even, there's a C in there, right? Like, there's a C. It's not even, everybody's like, oh, Tash, T-A-S-H. I'm like, no, there's a C in there. And they're like, how does that make sense? I was like, I don't even know, the middle name doesn't make sense, right? What I've come to find out is that my grandfather's friend in World War I, my great-grandfather, it was his buddy who lost his life, and they named him that middle name, then he named my dad that middle name, and that's how I became a third. It had meaning, and I still hated it. But when I drank, and I started to become involved with other kids at school, girls started to say, oh, Teddy Tash. And it was great after that. That's what alcohol does to me. I can't remember that my girlfriend tells me to take chicken out 5 minutes later. Like, literally, I was walking out, I was like, man, she just told me 5 minutes ago to take the chicken out. I had to go back upstairs, take chicken out. But I can tell you at 16 what I drank for the first time. And I don't think it matters what it was. I just think I knew what it did for me, so I'll never forget it. I have a spiritual relationship with the first drink. It was warm honey brown. It was warm Budweiser. And I had no intention. I was the last of my friends to drink. I grew up, ominous warning, I failed to heed. My grandmother may or may not be alcoholic. I don't know. I know she was told to stop drinking and stop smoking at the age of 70 or she would die. Never touched another cigarette, never drank again. But I do know she exhibited a lot of alcoholism until she died. So maybe she was. But I grew up in a home where alcohol destroyed the relationship to my grandparents. It made them miserable until she stopped drinking. I was my grandfather's only hope in life, and obviously you know how that turned out, because I'm here with you guys. My stepdad ruined my brothers and sisters' lives, my mom's lives, and he was an addict. My dad I never met him until I was 18 because of his alcoholism. Like, I knew what alcohol did, and I always said I would never do that. And then I got alcohol in me at 16, and it changed. Now, I don't have words like phenomenon of craving at 16. I don't know what a big book looks like. I don't know there's an allergic reaction. I would never have thought of an obsession. I just knew that after the first couple of drinks, those guys looked different. I love when people, it does. It changed me, but more importantly, alcohol changed you. You didn't seem so different to me. I fit right in, and I didn't care if I didn't fit in because I felt free. And how I knew that is the next morning. Because I was the first one that threw up. I was the first one that passed out. I'm pretty sure I was actually the only one that threw up that night, and the only one that passed out. I got walked home, taking baby steps all the way back to First Street. And the next morning, I'm a restaurant guy. I get up literally, if 8 o'clock is too early for me still to this day. And it's always been that way. But that morning I got up at like 6:45, and my buddy ran a bicycle shop that you rent bicycles from, and he had to get up early. And I drove my bike, throwing up half the time on the way. And when I got there, I was trying to explain to him basically like what I felt. I was like, were you there last night? Did you feel that? And he thought I was absolutely out of my mind, and I didn't know why. And what he said, he's like, dude, as much as you drank, the only thing I know is you should still be sleeping. I don't even know what you're doing here. I don't want to be here. And I didn't know why that was so odd and strange until I came here and read a big book. Like, I had no idea that, like, it solved something inside of me that I had been longing to have solved since the day I could remember. And I obviously kept drinking, you know? Like, my drinking was not yet continuous. I love that part of Bill's story where he said, but it disturbed my wife. And it's true, my drinking was not continuous in high school. But whenever I drank, it disturbed every single one of my friends. Because every time I went to a party, I was the guy that drank until he literally threw up everywhere. And there was no control. You know, there was no control. Absolutely not. I can't tell you how many parties I ruined. I can't tell you how many friends of mine got grounded because of me. And I was able to go home scot-free. You know, I love the part of our book that we all know. It says we drink for the effect produced by alcohol. I'm not going to repeat these lines to you because you know the lines. And I get that when I come in here. Like, I get, like, the alcohol at the end, it seems like I don't know how I'm going to ever get out of this. This seems like the only normal life. But whenever I get the opportunity to take a guy through the book, I'm like, let's go back. Because I experienced that line from the very beginning. I was the president of the National Honor Society. I was captain of the basketball team, captain of the golf team. I worked at the rec center. People knew me. I was pretty well known. I was a good kid. And yet I could never feel like I fit in with you. And then when I got alcohol, slowly but surely, even early on, it took some of that stuff. It eroded some of that stuff from me. My grandparents trusted me. My grandfather, I was the only kid that was allowed out past midnight. He was like, yeah, come home at 2 o'clock in the morning. I trust you. And then when I started drinking, he was like, wait a minute, you're not taking the car. Because he knew I would drink and drive. He knew I would do things that I said I would never do once I started drinking. And here's a guy who knew he never fought it. He would once in a while say, you better knock that stuff off, and he would never fight it. And I just knew from that moment alcohol was going to be an important part of my life. And I try not to talk too much about it. Like, if I just kind of assume if I'm here and I give you guys that much, you guys all know that I'm in the right place. I didn't get sober try to get sober for the first time until I was 30. But there's a line in the doctor's opinion that I love, and it says that I formed this habit and found I could not break it. And I tried breaking numerous different kinds of habits that were not necessarily alcohol, but we'll just call them alcohol. And by the time I was 25, I think I kind of ran into that where I knew I could not stop on my own. So I started to rely upon things human, the family, girlfriends, if I just moved, if I just switched jobs. And none of that stuff worked. And then I ran into this woman at 27 years old, and within 6 months she's pregnant, and I was absolutely convinced that a kid will solve my alcoholism. And within 6 months, and this is the honest truth, I remember sitting there, and the thought came in, is this life? Like, feeding babies and changing diapers? Like, is that it? I love him. I mean, I love him. He's my boy, but like, this can't be. There's got to be more to life than this. And I just couldn't stop drinking. I went to my first treatment center at 30 and was convinced I was going to stop. I'm convinced that I'm going to stop every time I go to treatment, right? I'm absolutely convinced when I get there. And I know what to do. And I tell you what to do. I'm really easily institutionalized. Like, I know that I should get a chore there, and I should do the chore really well. I should follow all the rules. And I love it. It says, when you decided that you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, I would see AA guys come into the first treatment center, and I was like, I definitely made a decision. I didn't want anything that they had. I was like, I don't want that. That sounds like a really boring, glum life. You guys are driving out to treatment centers on a Tuesday at 7. Like, where's your wife at? Like, this sucks. Like, that can't be fun. And then my kid's mom, within 6 months, is telling me, if you don't stop drinking, you got to leave, like tonight. And if moral convictions were enough to keep me sober, if I just a desire to want to be a better dad or live a better life was enough, I would have stopped that night because my kid's 3 years old and he's autistic and he loves me and he's on my leg. He's crying, she's crying, and the easiest decision I have ever made, even up to this moment right now, was to pack a bag and leave. Because I knew I could not stop drinking. But my mind, delusional enough, will tell me, you'll be a dad, just come home on weekends. Just take them on weekends. I don't even have a place to go. Like, the place I have to go is with a bunch of people who are partying like I am, so there's absolutely no way my kid's ever going to be allowed to come there. But I can tell myself that you'll be a dad. Just go. Get away from her. She's the problem. And you'll be able to show up on weekends, and I can't do it. And that drinking goes on for another 4 years. I moved to Florida. I moved back home with my grandmother, that poor woman, in an over 50 community where I'm not even allowed to be, so I've got to basically hide. And she's anxious because if the guy keeps coming to the house saying he can't be here, and he's threatening to throw her out of this community. I can't tell you the number of people that gave me opportunities. I had a boss fire me twice, 2 different summers from 2 different places because he loved me and he knew I'd work and he knew I was a good guy, but I'm just alcoholic and I just can't do what he asked me to do. And on June 8th of 2015, I'm walking around New York City with a trash bag full of my clothes because that's literally all I own, homeless. There's a girl next to me who's seeing me at the time. She's not like me at all. She's just trying to help me. She's pregnant, going to have an abortion because obviously I can't be a father, and all she's worried about is trying to help me. And my grandma sends me money with explicit instructions. Take this money, figure out what you're going to do. Just do not come to Florida. So I do what I think a lot of us would have done. I bought a bus ticket and went right to Florida, like right to her house. And I showed up. She didn't recognize me. I'm 6'2". I was 140 pounds at that time. I hadn't shaven, hadn't showered, and she didn't recognize me. And she finally let me in and told me I had 4 days to figure out what I was going to do. And 4 days later, I was back on the bus heading to a treatment center. And I do exactly what I do every treatment center. I do what I just described. I'm institutionalized. I do it really well. I leave, and within 2 weeks, I'm drinking again. And in the 2.5 weeks in between the 2 treatment stays, one of the most important things happened is I went to a meeting. I shared some stuff that was not AA related at all. I don't know what it was, but I know it wasn't AA related. And this guy at the end of the meeting grabbed my hand during prayer, and as soon as prayer was over, he wouldn't let go. And he was a big dude. And he said, hey, do you want to be free of all that stuff you just talked about? And I don't know about you guys, but first of all, I'm sarcastic. I still am. And second of all, I grew up with a lot of ideas about religion. So my mom switched to another religion that wasn't Catholicism. I used to have to go to that church when I would visit her. So you start saying things like freedom, and I start either immediately thinking saved, or like I don't even know what I think with the other freedom. And I'm like, dude, I live in America. I'm free already. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. And he's like, we're going to take you to a meeting, and we're going to take you through the steps in 6 weeks. I'm like, that's absolutely not happening. But he gave me his number, and he gave me a sponsee's number that he was with. And I'm polite, and I take it. And I don't know about you guys, when my back's against the wall, I'll call anybody for help. So a week later, I'm getting kicked out of this recovery house in South Philadelphia, and I didn't call him, but I called his sponsee. That kid seemed a little safer. And I called him. I said, hey, man, I got to go to this treatment center not too far from here, Penn Foundation. And I said, can you take me there? He was there in 10 minutes. And on the way out, and now I'm sick, right? I haven't drank in a couple days. I'm sick. And he's talking to me about the big book, and that's boring. Like, just shut up. I don't care, And then he started talking about a 4-step. Now I'm totally not interested. Like, that is the last thing I want to talk to you about. I don't want you're talking about yourself, dude. Like, stop talking about yourself. Just help me. But then he said something that struck me. He had made some amends, and he was 9 months sober. And because of those amends, he had been on disability his whole time sober, and he was unable to work, and he was getting evicted from his apartment. And because of making these amends, he had a place to go with some friends who would let him stay there until he could get off disability in a couple months. And I could wrap my arms around that. Because I know in my best moments, which weren't many at that time, but I would never think about helping you, right? Even in my best moments, I'm not thinking about you unless I'm benefiting. And I knew that kid wasn't benefiting because he wouldn't take gas money, he paid for cigarettes, and he waited 3 hours for me to get a bed that day. And I don't think it's any coincidence I went into that treatment center. I read the big book from cover to cover, and finally this thing, it seemed like Old English to me, made sense. And I kind of got an idea of what I suffered from. The problem with that is I'll sound real good in the meeting. The other problem with that is there's some other stuff after step 3 that I'm absolutely not going to do. So And I did, man. Like, I was kind of around people that you had to, so I got a sponsor, and I kind of went through the steps. I kind of wrote a 4-step. I mean, actually, I wrote a really, really extensive 4-step. It was just a lot of crap. Like, it looked really good on paper. But it wasn't. There was one thing I left off that I was resentful of my son having autism, which hopefully I'll get to in the next 20 minutes. But what alcoholism looks to me sober is that 5 months sober, I'm in a relationship with a girl, living with her mom and a kid who I met in a treatment center. And my rationalization for that is, well, I didn't talk to her at the treatment center. We never spoke. I talked to her on Facebook after I was 3 months sober, so it's cool. And I moved in with her, and I quit my job, and I called my grandmother, and she had broken her hip going home back to Florida from Christmas, so she can't get off the couch if she's by herself. And I said, I need money. And she's like, well, Teddy, my hip's broken. And I said, yeah, I get that. And this is real. I said, yeah, I get that. But I'm sober. I just need some help. So, yeah, I know you can't get the MoneyGram, but that nice lady that lives next to you, can she take you to MoneyGram and walk in? She said, Teddy, I can't walk. And I said, all right, well, look, I get that. I'm sober. I can wait. I don't need it today. Just put it in an envelope and throw it in the mailbox. That's me at 5 months sober without any relief, any instruction. At 10 months sober, I decided to go out with a girl that I worked with who was engaged. And at this time, I had written a 4-step and done a 5th-step, and my sponsor said, you haven't made any amends yet, but let's talk about this specifically. He said, you're going out to dinner with a girl, and I said, it's not a date, dude. It's just dinner and a movie. And he said, where I come from, that's a date. And he said, if you're really going to do this, he said, why don't you have her introduce you to her fiance, tell her what you're going to do. And he's like, if he's cool with it, go ahead. And I was like, bro, that's like the most irrational thing I've ever heard. Like, you wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that. No one would do that. And the problem with that is I go on these like dates with her, and nothing happens, right? Nothing happens. But every time I come home, I feel awful, and I feel terrible. At the same time, I'm paying child support, which I think that I'm wearing that like a stripe at meetings. I'm talking about paying child support at AA meetings, right? And no one's telling me, well, one guy did, because he was like you guys. He said, most guys take care of their kids. So I obviously never talked to that guy again. And my kid's mom said, I really appreciate you starting to take some ownership. He's like, why don't you should start seeing Carter, but before you should do that, you should meet Randall. And Randall's her husband today, but at that time he had been with her like 3 years, and he's taking care of my kid. I'm not. And I said, that's my son. I don't have to meet him. I was like, you're out of your mind. I'm not meeting this dude. And what I didn't know is if I had a real idea of what I suffered from at that point, I would have done anything to see my son. And not only do I not see him, but I started insulting Randall. Every time I get off the phone, I'd be like, yeah, tell Randy I said what's up. Now, that sounds benign, but thank God for 9th step. I made an amends to this guy 3 years ago. And out of nowhere, it came to me. I didn't have this I wasn't clear on this harm, but just talking to him, I said, you know what, dude? I was like, it actually just came to me. You probably suffer the brunt of a lot of things I used to do to her for years. And that guy started crying. And he said, dude, every day I suffer from that. I said, well, if there's anything I could do to make it right with you. And he said, just be good to her and keep being a dad. And I'm good to her today, and I keep being a dad. If you like me on my wildest dreams, I would have told you, I never would have thought that I would want a working relationship, let alone a friendship with this woman. And today I have both. But here I am at 10 months sober while I was taking care of my kid years ago, and I'm calling him Randy. What I know about this guy is his mom, not his sister, not a family member, no friends call him Randy. That is not his name. He hates it. He's Randall. And I call this dude Randy, yet he's being more of a father than I am. And I can't understand why I wake up the day of the year and I just want to drink. And for a week I fought it. I told people in my sober house, I told people in my recovery house, I told people at meetings, I told my sponsor, I played golf. I spoke in an hour speaker meeting, actually, down in Orland. And for 55 minutes I talked about what it used to be like. For 5 minutes I talked about what kind of happened, because not much happened. At the end of that meeting, a guy walked up to me and he said, man, I've never heard anybody describe the insanity of alcoholism like that for that long. And I wore that like, yeah, my story's awesome, right? And what I didn't know is I described 55 minutes of active alcoholism, so I was headed right back to her, and for a week later I drank. And long story short is I drank for a couple days. I did what I like to do. I experienced something on this last run that I used to judge people for in AA. I was like, this is Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'll never be useful to those people because I don't have that experience. And then, well, God gave me the experience because I didn't get kicked out of the sober house. I laid there for 2 days with the obsession because now it's on me and I can't get it off. And the thought came to me, you have medical history, go to the hospital, say you're in pain, get some relief, and then go back to AA tomorrow. 3 weeks later, I'm having a surgery I don't need. I'm not in any pain at all. At all. I had every test done that no 35-year-old should have. There's just no way. They did numerous CAT scans, colonoscopies, you name it, I had it. And they couldn't find anything because there was nothing wrong with me. And I went back a couple days after the script ran out, and the surgeon came to me and he said, you have scar tissue and that probably causes that kind of pain you're describing in 1% of people. He's like, you could be that person. He's like, so the only thing we can do is open you up. And he thought he was scaring me, and I knew that I was getting loaded for free. And I was like, let's do it. And we did it the next day, and that was probably the only time I was in pain was right after the surgery, because now I have this thing to be in pain over. I have 50 staples down my stomach. And that sent me off on a 10-month run that I just could not get out of. I can't even describe to you in words what it was. I tried to get sober for a couple of days, a couple stints in the middle of that. I'd last at most maybe a few days. I almost died during that stint. On May 7th of 2016, I was 9 months sober, and I was working at this Red Lobster in Pottstown. And everybody sent me happy birthday. Everybody. I don't know if you've ever worked in a restaurant. Front of the house staff does not like the back of the house staff. No one likes each other. And the whole place in the kitchen with birthday cake and candles and cookies, they all sang me happy birthday. And it had been a long time since I had experienced that. On May 7th of 2017, I walk into that same place, 80% of the same staff. No one says a word to me. And I go home that night in this little room I'm living in. It's 8x10. I got a queen-size blow-up mattress that has to be inflated 5 times a night because it's got holes in it. I would have told you I had a queen-size bed. A chair pretty much like you guys are sitting in. I would have told you I had a recliner. And a 45-inch TV that was absolutely necessary. More necessary than the bed. Because if you're like me, I get to those spots and I am physically drunk but mentally sober. And what alcohol used to treat is no longer working, and I can't shut this off. And that provides me just a tiny bit of relief every night. And I went home that night and I sat there, and the thought came, the curious little phenomenon is maybe you're supposed to just wait tables at Red Lobster and die from drinking. And the sound reasoning came and said, Teddy, you don't die fasting. And this kid had been trying to get me into a treatment center in California. I thought it was an insurance scam. If I'm being honest with you, it was. I'm not going to lie, but I got help and I'm here today because of that place. And 4 days later, I was on a plane to California. And something happened when I got there. I have been in numerous treatment centers, and it's not against, I need to be institutionalized in those moments. I need separation. I need a little bit of time. That's just my experience. But when I got there, no one was talking to me about anything but the big book and 12 steps. Everybody that worked there had a profound experience with the 12 steps, and it was evident. It was evident. It was like Bill's story when he's looking at Ebby, and it was like the evidence of the miracle was right before me. Like I could see it. And my counselor, I'm a mixed kid, man. My dad's black, my mom's white. A lot of that fear, a lot of the stuff I grew up with is not why I'm alcoholic, but alcohol relieved some of that. I'm sitting in front of this guy, and he takes off his flannel, and he spent a lot of time in the California prison system. And as soon as he takes off his flannel, he's got swastikas tattooed on his forearms. And I was like, oh man, right? Like this guy's in front. I'm in California, right? I'm not too far from LA, and I was like, well, he's gonna send me to Compton, right? I don't know much, and that's immediately where my mind takes me. And it took me 2 days of a couple groups and a couple sit-downs to this guy to recognize that whatever happened to him from working the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous changed him. The guy that got the tattoos is not the guy that was sitting in front of me. And he gave me one suggestion. He said, Teddy, there's an old guy that's going to come around your house, and he's going to be willing to take you through the steps out of the goodness of his heart. He's 80. He doesn't have a lot of people in his life, so he helps young guys. And this is how my mind snapped shut, because in that moment I was like, yeah, I'll do whatever. I'll do whatever, Kenny. And I get back to the house, and Fred approaches me over a game of pool, and as soon as he whipped me, which was embarrassing. He came around the pool table, and I'll never forget it, and he looked at me, and I stopped him. I said, Fred, I know what you're doing here, man. I said, I know AA, I know how it works. We don't go through the steps in treatment. Here I am telling this 80-year-old man who's 40 years sober how we do things in AA. I'm 12 days sober at 3,000 miles away from where anything I know. And he said, well, kid, I hope you don't forget why you're here. And if you ever want to talk, I'll be in that room every day. And he walked away from me. He didn't chase me, he didn't beat me over the head with a book. And a day later, I went in there and I talked to him. And I went in there with my big book, and I think he knew. I don't know how he knew, but he knew. So I go in there with a big book, and he opens up a 12 and 12. And I was like, we don't do the steps out of the 12 and 12, right? And he said, well, that's how we're going to do the steps. And I think he just knew I needed to be open. And something phenomenal happened. We get to a 4-step a couple days later, and he outlines a 4-step out of the big book. And he gives me 2 hours to write it out. And he says, I'll be back in 2 hours. I'm going to eat dinner, and when I come back, we're going to do a 5th. And we did, and something happened. And I can't, unless you've done it, you don't know. But, like, if you've done it, you know. Like, something happened. I had a perspective change on a lot of things. So when I leave that treatment center, I said to him, like, sarcastically as I could possibly say, I said, am I supposed to make some amends when I leave here, Fred? I was like, I'm out from California, man. I haven't hurt anybody out here yet. I don't know. What am I going to do? And he said, well, kid, I would strongly suggest you do. And he walked away from me again. And that's the last time I've seen him. I will tell you this. It came to me about 2 months ago. His name and number is in my 12 and 12, and I don't often look at it, which I probably should look at it more. But I called him and I thanked him. And all he said was, he said, kid, I told you God loves you. And he thanked me for calling him. And I owe that guy my life. And a month after being out of this treatment center, I got another sponsor. I started going through the steps a little bit more thoroughly, and I get this really good job. And within a couple of weeks, I go up to the office, and they wanted to talk to me. And I've been arrested at jobs before for numerous reasons. So I know that, like, when there's witnesses, it's not really a good thing, right? It's usually you're going to either get fired or they call the cops. That's been my experience. And the guy asked me, is there anything you want to talk about before we get started today? We had a long talk about honesty during your interview. And I said, yeah, I'm here for recovery. I didn't want to tell you guys that. I know the stigma. Probably here because of child support. I haven't paid it, but I'm going to start paying it as soon as I make some money here. And he said, that's not why you're in the office. I was like, great. And he's like, thank you for that information. That's good to know. So he's like, no, you have 8 serious charges from 2012. And those charges were 2 counts of domestic assault. I want to say this because I know there are women in the room. I did not do it. But from doing inventory, I made 4 decisions that night and probably a lot of decisions before that placed me in a position to be accused of it. And thank God for that freedom, you know. There was a counter-terroristic threat because I did say that I would kill my kid's mom if she didn't stop doing what she was doing, and a neighbor heard it, and that's all the neighbor saw and heard. Criminal conspiracy. So they weren't like major, but there was time. Like there was no way you could couple that with not having paid child support for a really long time, that there was not time. And my sponsor at that time asked me, he's like, Teddy, you know, what happened the last time you didn't want to make any amends in AA? And I said, well, I drank. And he said, didn't you almost die too? And I said, yeah. And he said, what do you think you should do? Logic and reason, man. I am a worshiper of the mind, and I believe everything it tells me. I don't care if I have little experience with it or not. I said to him, I was like, yeah, but shouldn't I save up money for 6 months and go back with bail money? Wouldn't that be the smart thing? I said, well, am I not affecting, because I know this book and I'm dangerous with it. I said, am I not affecting my family if I turn myself in and go to jail? And he said, kid, what family? You're 3,000 miles away from home. No one talks to you. They don't care if you're in jail. And this is a man probably over the facts on himself. This is how he got me. And I just started telling this like a year ago. I think I was afraid to look stupid, but this is the honest to God's truth. He said, I hear you sharing in meetings, and you're really good. He's like, think about the story this is going to be from the podium one day if you turn yourself in. Like Daddy had me, dude. He had me. I was like, that's great. And I can tell you, when I got on the plane, that was not the thought. Like I was like, wow, I can't believe I just did this, because now I'm in it. And I turned myself in. Long story short, as I walked out of there, my kid's mom showed up. She made me take a picture from the courthouse because I don't show up for anything, ever. And she's like, I will not show up until I know you were there. And she showed up as soon as I sent the picture. And I walked out of there a free man. I had 6 months probation I could do online, provided I finished treatment. Treatment is time served, and they gave me a huge fine. And when I walked out of that courthouse, I was told because of child support I wouldn't be walking out. And I walked out, and me and her had a conversation, and she's crying, and she said, I just want to let you know, while you were in there, I went across the street and I absolved you of your arrears and all your child support. And I thought she was about to tell me she didn't ever want me to see Carter again. And what she told me is, she's like, I don't know the guy that's standing in front of me. I've never seen this in you. I don't recognize you. And she's like bawling. She can't even talk. And she said, whatever it is that you're doing out there, please go out and continue doing whatever it is that you're doing, because the guy that's standing in front of me today is the guy I need to be a father to my son. And that's all you've ever been telling me to do. You know, I'm not a guy that's going to stand up here and tell you guys that I wasn't told the truth. You know, there were a lot of people that didn't tell me the truth, and that's fine. It says if you're as seriously alcoholic as we were, it's not their job to determine if I'm alcoholic like they were who wrote the book. It's my job to find somebody and to know that I'm that alcoholic. And if that's the case, I've got two alternatives. And thank God that I found out. Thank God I found men, and thank God I was willing to do some things that I would never have ever dreamed of doing. What I found here is the miracle begins when an alcoholic with a lot of help from God starts to convince a guy like myself to take some actions that he never would have dreamed of. And the miracle began that day. I flew back to California. I saved up money. You know, a lot of people will tell you, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this early on. I knew immediately everything was back here, man. Like, every amends I ever had to make, all the work I had to do was back home. So within 6 weeks, I saved up money. I took a 3-day bus trip across the country. I don't know if you guys have been on Greyhound, but it is not the best bus stop. They're not in the best places. And I'm pretty sure on that trip, I was asked if I wanted to sell some stuff. I was asked if I wanted to buy some stuff at one point, and I'm not lying. I was asked if I wanted to sell myself for some stuff. And I was not fighting it. I wasn't. I was free. 5 months sober, absolutely free. I got to Wilmington, Delaware. I took a lot of bus trips to try to escape my alcoholism. And if you ever go from Philly to Florida, the first stop going to Florida is Wilmington. The last stop coming home from Florida before you get to Philly is Wilmington. And you have 20 minutes to smoke a cigarette while they board the bus. And I would get to smoke a cigarette every time, and I would look around Wilmington, even in my worst moments, and I would be like, man, who lives in Wilmington, Delaware? Like, who would ever live here? This is a joke, right? Like, and the beauty of this stuff is that God showed me how to create the fellowship I crave in Wilmington. And I am forever blessed for that. I am a father today. I am financially solvent in my kid's life, and not just with child support. When his mom needs other stuff, I provide it. And thanks to inventory, you know, I desperately want him to call me Dad, and he doesn't. His autism is I just trust that his mom knows what's best. He calls me Teddy. And what I found is that just because I want to come tell you guys and look really good in front of you guys and say that that's hope, that he calls me Dad. And the truth is, I'm a father. It doesn't matter what he knows. It doesn't matter what you think. I'm a father today. I'm a father because I get up on Sunday mornings after having worked 12 hours and I go up and take a 2-hour train ride to see him. And I take a 2-hour train ride home, and I show up to my home group an hour later. That stuff's what makes me a father. I take time off of work to be at his dentist appointment. That's what makes me a father, and it really has no bearing on what he calls me. In fact, his mom was trying to show him something with his iPad, and she wanted to tell him he had to have a password. And she goes, the password's your favorite friend. Now, he loves Donald Duck, so that was the password. And he said, oh, it's Teddy? That's what I get to experience. Last week, for the first time since I've been sober, when I was leaving, he said, I'm going to miss you. Because he knows me today. And it doesn't matter what the name is. And that's kind of what I found out about the word God, too, right? It doesn't matter what I call it. It just matters that it is. Deep down inside of all of us is the fundamental idea of God, and my kid sees that in me today. And that's because of you people. You know, I have relationships with my family. I've made a shit ton of amends. Sorry for the... Damn, I almost made it. But I'm free today. And you know, it's funny. I had 2 people recently have said they don't want to see me. I do not follow instruction well. I don't. I'm not easily sponsored. I'm sponsored, but I'm not easily sponsored. But the girl said, I'm not interested in you getting any peace. I'm glad you're doing well. Don't ever contact me again. And my ego, because I desperately wanted to come tell you a cool story, I was like, no, and I'm typing, no, it's not about my peace. It's because obviously you have some things you need to say to me and I'm willing to listen. And she said, obviously you don't follow direction either, and I have to block you, and she blocked me. Hopefully I follow direction better from going forward. But I try and I remain willing. That's all 8 and 9 ask me is I remain willing. And I've made a lot and I've paid a lot and I continue to pay. And I do my best to practice these principles in all my affairs. You know, I get invited to my family's, house. I have an uncle that won't hear an amends, but I just keep showing up. We got to put flowers on my grandparents' grave. about a month ago. And again, he will not hear this, but I get to do those things with him anyway. And what I found out from his partner, and this sums up my experience a lot with AA, whether it be sponsorship or amends or relationships, is that he said, Teddy, sometimes you drop a plate and it breaks and it's got a couple pieces and you can super glue that thing back together and you can use it. And he said, and sometimes, like what you've done, is you throw that plate in anger and you smash it and it's just, you can't put it back together. And he said, maybe the best thing you can hope for is a new plate. And what I get in here is a new opportunity at life, a new plate, a new relationship. I don't even know if I want it to look like the old one, maybe just a new one. It says pluck from the scrap heap, right? It doesn't mean that God's going to restore me from a 79 Pinto to a 2022 Lexus, right? He's going to take the 79 Pinto, restore it, and make it usable so that he can use it. And that's what I get in here. Anytime I've been in treatment, I'm thinking about girls. Is she cute? How many cigarette breaks do I get? I don't have cigarettes, so generally I need you to provide them too. Are the therapists cool? Like, how many groups do I got to go to? Are the AA meetings going to come in? I'm literally thinking about myself. I'm a guy who's called his kid's mother from 2 different facilities on 2 different Mother's Days, asking for cigarette money from her without even mentioning Happy Mother's Day. In our co-founder's worst moment, not even sure if the experience he had was real. Asking the doctor, is this real? Like, you didn't even know. The thought that preceded that was, I wonder if 1,000 alcoholics would love to have what was so freely given to me. And because of that thought, I get to be here with you guys on a Saturday night at 8:30. And the central fact of my life today is, if you had asked me 6 years ago, I would have told you, oh, you're out of your mind, I would have walked out of here. But the central fact of my life today is there is absolutely nothing cooler than that. Because without that, I wouldn't have this. So thank you, God bless you, God bless your families, and God bless Alcoholics Anonymous.
My name's Nick, I'm an alcoholic. Stepping on a round of applause for Teddy, that was awesome. Thank you for that powerful, heartfelt message. Just a couple quick announcements. We have a YouTube page. All of our speakers are on there. Previous recordings available. If you want information about that, come see me after the meeting. We have a Facebook page, a Conscious Contact speaker group. You can find all kinds of resources just to find meetings online and in person. We have 2 other meetings. One is on Monday nights. It's a step meeting at 6 o'clock right here in this church. And we also have a sister meeting on Thursday nights at 7:30 right up the street on Court Street at Salem Church at 7:30 Thursday nights. Big book meeting. And the speakers come here at their own time and expense. It's customary for us to form a line and thank them. And please, by all means, take some of that cake home if anybody wants it. And thanks everybody for being here. We'll close with the Lord's Prayer. Our Father,
who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.